Ja Morant is box office. If you have seen him play at any point in time over the last 2 seasons, you would more than likely have seen a highlight play, whether it be his time at Murray State, where the only use he had for the opposing team's big men was as a stepladder, or it be in the NBA, where he has shown no fear, treating all-star caliber bigs the exact same way.
Sexton did knock it away, and Ja going for the big-time hammer.
Now, despite having an incredible rookie season, which has him poised to receive this year's Rookie of the Year honors, and to become only the 3rd player in NBA history to lead a playoff contending team in points and assists per game as a rookie, and the only player since Michael Jordan, many doubts still remain over the legitimacy of Morant and the Grizzlies, with the NBA's return in Orlando fast approaching. Now, those question marks were further intensified when the most recent fixture was released, which saw the Grizzlies match up against 5 teams certain to make the playoffs, with all 5 of these difficult games coming in succession, as they face the Jazz, Thunder, Raptors, Celtics, and the Milwaukee Bucks to conclude their 8 lead-in games. The plethora of tough fixtures has sparked talk amongst the NBA community, with many of the belief that the NBA has increased the difficulty of the Grizzlies' draw in an attempt to see Zion and the Pels in the first round of the playoffs. Although I do agree that the NBA would love to see Zion in the playoffs, the difficult fixture for the Grizzlies is reflective of how their fixture was prior to the NBA hiatus, so I don't necessarily agree with the notion that the Grizzlies have been screwed over. But let's just forget about the fixtures for a second. This Memphis team is not a playoff team by chance. They've earned their spot at the 8th seed and should be treated accordingly. Following a 13-22 start to the year, the Grizzlies were one of the best teams in the NBA over the course of the next 30 games of the season, recording 19 wins in that period of time. And over that stretch of 30 games, only 5 teams had a better record than Memphis: the Raptors, Lakers, Bucks, Thunder, and Clippers, with 4 of those teams being considered serious title contenders, and the Thunder are a real threat to make some noise in the playoffs as well. Now, there is a common saying that defense wins championships, and you can't argue with that. Look at last year's champions, the Toronto Raptors. Elite defensive players at their positions in Pascal Siakam, Marc Gasol, and Kawhi Leonard, with Kyle Lowry being a great defender as well, amongst others. And you can take it back to the Golden State Warriors, who were praised for their offense, but were also an incredibly good defensive team. You can look at any of the great championship teams, and you will more than likely find they were led by great defensive players and were a part of a great defensive system. Now, why am I saying this? I clearly don't believe the Memphis Grizzlies will be this year's NBA champions, although considering the year we have had, that wouldn't even surprise me at this point in time. But getting back to the point, defense is a crucial aspect of not only winning championships, but winning playoff games, and that's the kind of intensity that every game will be played at in Orlando, with numerous teams fighting for seeding, whether it be the cluster of teams fighting for a higher seed in the West, or the likes of the Grizzlies trying to secure a playoff berth. There won't be any easy games, well, except for the 2 G League representatives in the Nets and Wizards. But why do I bring up defense? Because over the course of the last 30 games, in which the Grizzlies went 19-11, they have had the 4th best defensive rating in the NBA, only behind the Bucks, Raptors, and Lakers, and ahead of the Clippers and Celtics. That is elite company for a team that many believe are just hanging on to their 8th seed and are certain to be dislodged. But what has made the Grizzlies so good as a team, and in particular defensively, over that course of time? Now, what is very apparent when watching Memphis is the defensive versatility within the team. For instance, you have the 7-foot stretch 4 Jaren Jackson Jr., whose incredible agility and defensive instincts enable him to switch onto guards or forwards on the perimeter and stay in front of them. Now, this is an obvious strength, but what is an obvious weakness for Jaren is his post defense, and this is where Memphis utilizes Valanciunas' biggest defensive strength, post defense. Now, defensively, the only other center in the league that impacts his opponent's shot percentage at the rim more than JV is Joel Embiid. Now, it seems quite straightforward to mask the pair's weaknesses with the individual's respective strengths, but doing so has proven pivotal towards the Grizzlies' defensive success this season. However, the defensive combination of JV and Triple J is not the sole reason behind the team being so good defensively. A lot of this can be attributed to the depth and versatility of the whole squad. Let's look at one of this year's revelations for the team, D'Anthony Melton. After being traded from the Suns in exchange for Javon Carter, Melton has made a huge impact as an incredibly tenacious and impactful defender, becoming one of the premier on-ball defenders in the NBA. Over the season, he became one of only 5 players to post at least a 3% steal rate this season. His quick hands and ability to poke the ball away from opponents is matched with an incredible 6'8" wingspan, which saw him guard both shooting guards and point guards incredibly effectively, providing defensive relief for Ja following the offensive load placed on Morant's shoulders. Now, we won't go through the whole roster and identify each of their strengths as individual defenders, but just recognize how the Grizzlies as a whole have a number of versatile defenders that can switch onto the perimeter, whether that be Brandon Clark or Gorgie Dieng or Triple J. They have high energy on-ball defenders like Melton and Tyus Jones, and they have one of the best post defenders in the NBA at the center spot. So the Grizzlies have established themselves as a great defensive team throughout the season, and in particular during their best stretch of the season, which came over the last 30 games, but there is far more to the roster than just their defense. We know Memphis don't just have a future star, but they have a star right now, a generational talent at the point guard position, and one of the best in the league. And Morant has spent this time putting in work over the last few months, which I detailed in one of my recent videos, link will be in the description, you don't want to miss it. Now, this combination of work ethic and talent that he possesses is a combination that is synonymous with all the greats in the league today, and in the league over the past. But when looking at a team that is ready to compete, a team that is ready to win and win against the best, you have to examine what that team has currently. Now, what this Grizzlies team has is a foundation. You have several players that have proved they are at the very least solid NBA players, with a number of these guys excelling in different aspects of the game. But you can't just have a solid foundation, you have to add star power to those pieces. Someone who can separate themselves from everyone else on the floor when the game is close. Someone who can will their team to victory when no shots are falling. Now, is there any bigger indicator of how well a player can lead their team to victory than their ability to perform in the clutch? Their ability to not only perform in the last quarter, but in the last 5 minutes of a game when the scores are separated by 5 or less points. Now, of all players to have been involved in 20 or more games that fit this criteria, Ja is 9th in the league for average points and is 2nd for field goal percentage, shooting a ridiculous 53.8% from the field in clutch time. That puts him ahead of the likes of Chris Paul, Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, and a host of other superstars in this league. Now, Ja Morant is playing as good as anyone in the NBA when it matters most as a rookie. And as a rookie, he is leading his team in the dying minutes in close games and doing so efficiently. For me, that is the definition of a star player, and that is the kind of player that will come up big for Memphis during this tough lead-in of games. Now, when discussing every aspect of the Grizzlies, we have to discuss one of the league's forgotten players, Justice Winslow. Winslow had a fantastic 2019 season for the Heat. With Goran Dragic in and out of the lineup due to injury, Justice had the opportunity to play the point guard position, and he looked a natural fit at that position, where he showed a very impressive ability to knock down shots from beyond the arc at a consistent rate. And this three-point shooting was made even more impressive with his ability to hit 41% of his catch and shoot threes, which he will be asked to do when playing a more off-ball role for the Grizzlies, with the likes of Jones and Morant asked to do a lot of the playmaking. However, despite it unlikely that the Grizzlies will call upon Winslow to be the team's primary ball handler with a first or second unit, his much improved playmaking ability gives Memphis the chance to add another playmaker to the lineup, and importantly a second ball handler to take the pressure off Morant or Jones. Now, in addition to the offensive impact that Justice can provide, defensively he can provide just as much, if not more of an impact. At 6'5", he's incredibly strong and has had several tough defensive assignments over the course of his career, showing a much desirable defensive versatility with an ability to switch on positions 1 through 4 and do so effectively with his combination of size, speed, and strength, proving to be a nightmare for opponents on several different occasions throughout his career thus far. Now, how well the Grizzlies start the restart will be crucial to their playoff hopes. If they can take at least 2 out of 3 wins against the non-playoff teams that they match up against in their first 3 games, it would go a long way to solidifying their spot at the 8th seed. And in addition to the early 2 wins, if Memphis were to win 1 or 2 of the next 5 games against the tougher opponents, they would be guaranteed a play-in spot at the 8th seed, which would give them a great opportunity to advance through, with the play-in games favouring the 8th seed, as the 9th seed will be required to beat the 8th seed twice in a row, as opposed to once for the 8th seed, leaving the Grizzlies in a prime position to advance through to the playoffs if that were to happen. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies were one of the best teams in the entire league over the course of the last 30 games of the season, from not just a wins and loss standpoint, but from a defensive standpoint as well. Now, to add to this, they have one of the best closers in the league. Yes, Ja is a rookie, but he relishes the opportunity to show up big in clutch time, and he has been incredible in those situations so far in his career. And there's nothing to suggest he won't get even better following the break and following the work he put in. Now, there is a chasing pack that are coming for the Grizzlies, but they have a lot of work to do to catch Memphis. And who is to say Memphis aren't going to further themselves from the pack, even with the tough run of fixtures they have coming up? In my eyes, the Grizzlies are still in pole position to take the 8th seed and advance to a playoff series, which will have Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr. matched up against LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Now, how often do you make it to the end of YouTube videos? Well, you did on this one, so that probably warrants a sub and maybe a like, because there's plenty more content coming, and it helps the channel out, so that'd be appreciated. But anyways, have a good day, and I'll catch you around.